Welcome in, everyone. RFK Refugees podcast. Ted here, John here. Here we are, just a little under 20 days till the regular season kicks off for Major League Soccer. And we are here to talk DC United, Washington Spirit, everything that you want. I, of course, am sounding slightly less jubilant, slightly less. I don't know what the word is. I sound sick, and because I'm working myself through a little bit of a cold, mostly on the back end of it, but it's still there. But John, how you doing, my friend? Hopefully you sound less sick. Let's
Hopefully,
see.
I hope so. I hope that I do. Yeah, no, I'm feeling okay. I'll knock on wood. I feel like I have not been sick in at least a couple weeks. I was racking my brain trying to think what I did this weekend, and I don't think I did anything. I went to Costco. I went to Costco for the same reason everyone else went to Costco because they were like, if all paper products are going to be tariffed 25%, I better get all of the paper towels I need for the next 6 months. But it turns out that was a bit of a canard anyway. But Costco got my money, and that's okay. That's what happens sometimes. What about you? Other than being sick, were you just sort of convalescing at home, getting better?
Well, no, so I didn't really start getting sick, I guess, till about Sunday. So I pushed through first referee games of the season. Definitely, like, I'm used to like starting like Marchish, and you kind of roll in with like some rec level games. Now this was full like ECNL high level travel, U15 games that were fairly intense. The quality was actually fairly decent.
Right into the fire.
Yeah, right into the fire with some high level games and high level play, which took some like I mean I got the AR, I did the AR okay, and then it's like you get the center, it's a little bit of an experience, and my positioning wasn't at where it needs to be, but we're it's a
You're
work
working in
we're
the
working
preseason.
working into it. Exactly. So as long as I'm good by high school, then we'll be good to go. But yeah, man, let's talk about it. We are just a fair suit of games. We've got a lot of news that's come out, a lot of differing stories. Let's jump right into it. We're going to talk DC United. They're the team that's starting the regular season. John has, I believe, the first game of the season on in the background right now between New
Last
England.
game. Well, no, I was gonna put the last game on. It was, but that was a 3-0 loss to Charlotte, and I didn't even want to have that in the background. This is the last win of the season against New England.
That's what it is.
Just a
Okay. So it's
random
the road.
game.
It's the road game. Okay, I thought it was
Mhm.
like I thought you were like starting off and then each.
I've done
Anyway,
that. I have done that in this long off season, but I picked the wins
this
mostly.
is great. This is great content for the people listening on radio. Anyway, let's talk about it. And I'm gonna open up broadcast updates. We got some news that I don't think we've
We've not. We've
kind of
not.
talked about.
We asked
Uh,
for this, by the way.
yeah, we did. So first things first. So if you notice on the regular season schedule, when we talked about this, there were games on Sunday night, and there wasn't the Saturday sort of slew of schedules, 7:30, 9:30, 10:30, 8:30 type schedule that we saw last time. Obviously this, this was sort of MLS's idea that they were going to put the games, they have this deal with Apple. It definitely led to couldn't really watch the games, couldn't really enjoy the games. You would watch your team, and I always had a problem with it too, because I'd watch DC United, and then I'd turn on by 9:30, and I'd get like two or three road games, so I wouldn't even really experience the whole like MLS 360. So they're now putting some games on Sunday night, which is they're calling Sunday Night Soccer. So it's kind of like a marquee match. I think DC, let's go back and check. I think they will get one game. There's going to be like a 30th anniversary type game. I think where they're going to play San Jose as kind of like a
Sweet.
homage to that first weekend. So I think that's like the one game DC United will get um,
I
on
mean,
that
it's what we
Sunday.
deserve. I wonder. There's probably some people that are really mad about this, but we should not be mad.
Yeah,
One
I
is
think
good.
there's some acceptance amongst the DC fans. Maybe there's some other in there, but I know that's the big one. But I think that's a good thing. I think it's good to have a marquee game. Um, and also I noticed this was snuck in. MLS wrap up will be after the Sunday night game, so they will actually talk about and wrap up the week, which was always kind of a problem with when you had games on Sunday. It was like you only covered certain parts of the game. So
So that's the good stuff about the broadcast.
yeah, bad
What's the bad
stuff.
stuff?
Well, there's more good stuff too. It also
Oh,
will be on Xfinity. I think they're opening it up
tell
through
me why
Xfinity.
they did that after I had to charge for the full season to hit my Apple account already. I wonder if I can get a refund. I have Xfinity in not Well, I should just pay for it. I'm not paying for Xfinity either. That's a bit of a. I'm not going to talk about that on the internet.
Yeah. It'll also be through DirecTV on residential, which is another, I think, good thing. And there'll also be, if you have T-Mobile, you get it free. So that they're bringing back the free season pass on T-Mobile. So I have T-Mobile, so I will take advantage of that. And my renewal doesn't hit till the 24th. So
Yeah, how
it
about that?
it does say like approved plans. I hope that just means you have to be like on like a build account. Like you just can't use it if you're like on prepaid or something like that.
You're
Because I have like an old like grandfathered account that's like cheaper than what's out there. Really don't think I think I'll just let it hit the charge hit because I think the increase in cost would not be worth it for like the
no.
free MLS season pass. So hopefully that's the case. We'll get more details as that kind of comes around. Um, Now the bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Remote broadcasting for some games. What those games are, I'm guessing mostly DC. Yeah, that's not great. That's not great, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think we've talked about this. John, what are your thoughts on this? Is this really like a big deal in your eyes?
It's not. I mean, it isn't a huge deal because we, as DC United fans, have been living with this for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Probably before the rest of the league. I think we were kind of pioneers in the cost saving part of this. It is an undeniable fact that there are things that get missed, and there are things that aren't seen, and things that aren't understood while they're not in the room. While they're not there while it happens. I think you know the cost is higher. The problem is that the thing we were excited about with Apple was like, well, they have infinity dollars, right? No costs spared, no expenses spared. We're gonna have this thing be as good as it can be. They're not gonna cheap out like a team that has no money has to do in order to get the broadcast out, like certain DC United had to do over the years. But this is like a weird cost cutting move that tells you, I mean, from a dollars and cents perspective, it makes sense to do this. But if they were doing well, if they were making hand over fist on this deal and the numbers are great, they probably wouldn't be already this soon into the deal looking to sort of cut out the middle of the sandwich here, which is kind of what they're doing. So I am annoyed by it. I'm not going to make a huge stink about it, but anytime that there's an issue where the announcers can't explain what's going on, I'm gonna post about it. That's
Here's
about all I can do. What do you think, Ted?
here's the interesting thing though. So they still are going to have like the home radio broadcast. So you still will have the option to listen to somebody broadcast the game who is actually there. So we will still get Dave Johnson. Um, we will still get all of the people that we have that used to be. Yeah, if you want to watch any game, you could just like tune into like the home radio broadcast, which is what I might do. I think if it's like just feels like really bad, I might just say, you know what, I can just turn that on. So that is a one like thing. Like there still will be somebody there. I think it also could potentially improve the radio broadcast at DC because I think they will give Dave Johnson like the actual main booth that's like overlooking the center of the field. Because I think while Apple TV had broadcasters there, they were very much sort of off to the side, and you could kind of tell they were like, if you ever listened to the game, they had trouble seeing certain things, and they were having to like look down at basically the Apple TV screen, their whatever their feed was to try to get replays. So I don't know. That's a potential silver lining, I guess. Silver lining, I guess, for the upcoming for this. I don't know. Maybe you disagree with me.
I mean, it's not. It's still not. I don't know if it's a silver lining. I just think that this is. We'll see how big of a deal this is. To your point, people have been dealing with this before, so we'll see if it's a big deal. I don't.
Yeah,
We've got bigger fish to fry.
bigger slide. Other news in the name: cash trades have now kicked off. I think this is an important thing to discuss, and we'll discuss it in a DC United lens, I think, for a little bit. But Jack McGlynn to Houston, $2.1 million. That's direct cash. I think part of it goes to Jack McGlynn. And then Dejan Joveljic. I don't. Is Dejan Joveljic? Joveljic is all I had on this thing on the rundown. To Sporting KC for $4 million. I hope Makai's paying attention. This is a guy who has so far utilized a lot of methods and trades and ability to sort of find players. I think what we've seen with this is these are players that are talented. McGlynn and Jovelich are extremely talented players, but don't necessarily fit within the roster and cap structure of those players. Or in Jack McGlynn's case, like he wants to go and sort of make his next move. He's done everything pretty much he can in Houston. Apparently, the offers for him um, were not great. I think they were just for like clubs that were like teetering with relegation, and basically they were dependent upon them like staying promoted. So this is, I think this is going to be possibly one of the more significant moves. It's also interesting. It's been framed as kind of this like way to sort of sell DP players. Like that's what it's designed to do, but we're seeing it be used on players that are talented and good, maybe not designated players on their current roster. I don't know. What do you make of these
mechanisms that make it easier to move designated players? You say. I wonder any team that would have benefited from a certain few of those in the last 2 months. Oh well. I think it's cool. I think the best thing about this, as always, is transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like that there's a trade kicker in it for the players, that the players are getting a percentage of the move. That's a very NWSL move of them to do that. Very player friendly move. So yeah, I think it's cool. We got a question here, sort of along that you said you were saying before. Makai better pay attention to this. Do you think that the both through GAM and also through potentially not having spent a lot of money on big name DPs, do you think this is an avenue where DC United can go out, particularly now with the holes in their roster? And we'll talk about maybe who might fill those. Do you think that this is the way they do that? This is in interleague, non-international players. Do you think this is the way we acquire somebody new?
Possibly. I don't know if you can really. I don't know if you can really say for sure. I feel like they would have potentially gone after one of these players. Like a Jovelich would be a player I would love to have in DC. McGlynn might be a little bit of an overspend considering he plays more of like a central midfielder, and we have a lot of space.
I was about to say the one spot we may not need a talented player.
Yeah,
or to pay for one at least.
Yeah,
that might be the one.
So, that's, I just hope Makai is paying attention. I think this is one of those things. I always talk about DC playing catch up, and this is sort of a new thing that's being thrown in. And whoever, figuring this part, section out, I think like U22s, for instance, no one's really like locked down a way to, best utilize that mechanism as far as like bringing in talent, having it contribute to the roster consistently. And then also, selling it, which is a lot of the intention. So I don't know. I think it could be a method. I think that a lot of teams could use. I think it's going to be a question of, I think for the league, it's more about trying to keep some of this talent inbound. I think, we've seen a lot of players move to League MX, and that's because they can pay like Monterey can go in, grab these players, pay them way more than what they could get from MLS. And I think this is maybe a way to keep some of those players in there. So
Brandon Vasquez being the one player going the other direction.
Yeah. Well, he's going to be a DP, but there have been several other players that have basically moved. It's been a big thing actually, is a lot of players have kind of moved, and that's because they're able to be offered a lot more salary. So
Liga MX becomes more interesting for me when I know a lot more of the players. So I'm for that. I'm for this.
Well, we won't have to worry about DC United versus Liga MX, which we'll get to a bit. I don't know. Last thoughts on this. I think this is still a new thing.
I also think we should move the trial list next in the rundown, since it goes with this.
It goes with this as far as
kind of about acquisitions and holes in the roster.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so we can do that. I was going to jump into John doesn't like my order. He's just going to switch. Fair enough.
It's editing. It's live editing.
Fair enough. Live editing. Okay. All right, we'll talk about that. New additions to the roster. Maybe not the most exciting additions to the roster.
No one's other than their relatives. No one's pumped, but no one's like really pumped. No one's getting a jersey for these two players potentially.
Right. These are guys who are not going to. You're not going to see them on the front page of the opening lead in Soccer Wise or Total Soccer Show of any of the remaining podcasts that cover the league. New additions: Brandon Cervania and Rita Zohir. Not official yet, but Golf is basically reporting that the deals are done. These are the two trialists that were sort of in the running. I think it's, on the one hand, I think it's a good thing that we're bringing in these players to kind of plug potential holes in the roster. Ted Pietro specifically out for several months. Jackson Hopkins out for a while.
We've got actual recovery dates on that now, which is good.
Yeah,
we didn't have that before.
Yeah, I think you're pulling that up, and I missed that from Stephen Goff.
I am. I'll get it up.
But basically, I think I think the prognosis on Ted Pietro is pretty good. He's going to be March, so you're talking about 4 or 5 games. He looks like, I think they showed a picture of him. He looks like he is doing better. Yeah, here it is. Ted Pietro targeting March. Jackson Hopkins ankle targeting a May return, and then Hakeem Karamoko probably June. Matty Patola, Aaron Herrera healthy. Luis Barraza out, one more friendly. So
these apparently Troy was saying even with these 2 players signed, the roster will sit at 26, and they will not use any more roster spots. They'll be open until the summer.
Yeah. So 26 players. I think it's a positive thing that they went out and they still are plugging those holes with some players. These are not players that are, I think, maybe unproven at a top division level. But Rita Zohir, for instance, was a pretty decent standout in USL Championship. Cervania was getting minutes and then suffered a critical ligament tear for Toronto, so was a player getting minutes and sort of building himself up. So I think it's another example of McKay trying to utilize, assets that have depreciated but are still talented. It's just a matter of can they recover from their injury. And he's had some time to. He was out until August, and then he came back. So
Berhalter also gave him a cap at the senior level, which is interesting to me. He's got one cap.
One cap. Also also has Puerto Rico, potentially could play for Puerto Rico, but yeah, I mean, I think it's good to see players getting a save. I kind of watched a little bit of highlights just to get it. Cervania seems like more of a 8 type player, kind of sits in the midfield. We'll try to make that sort of that second pass you see. Zohir is definitely a number 10 attacking midfielder. He's going to run in the box, try to score. One thing I did notice, at least on his USL Championship highlights, dude can take a free kick and can also provide service on a corner kick. So definitely a player that, DC, I think is there's questions about who's going to be the set piece deliverer. They've lost, I think, 2 of their main set piece delivers in Pedro Santos and Matthias Klick. So something to watch out for. I don't know how many minutes. I think these players are probably going to start off the bench. I don't think you're going to see them. I don't think these guys are going to come in and be starters. But
to your point,
there's depth.
To your point, they could have just said, "Listen, we can string this along till May or June. We'll be fine. We can just make it work." So I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, it's to their credit. I think they kind of held. I think they went and they said, all right, we're going to get, basically 2 deep at every position. So every position we're going to be 2 deep. And then if we suffer an injury crisis, we have the wherewithal, we have the roster space, we have the salary cap space now that we can go in and find those players, fill those holes. We're not just going to get players that are, we're going to get players that are relatively cheap, but are players that have had some semblance of success. I think Cervinia falls into that realm. He was getting regular minutes for Dallas and for Toronto. Coming up, he was definitely one of an up and coming player. Zohir was getting relative minutes at a USL Championship level. So those are guys that maybe it's the simple of you bet small and maybe you win big on them. We'll see. I think it's certainly yeah, finding a set piece taker set us back a bit. Yeah. So again, not world beaters, but I think players that I think we'll see some contributes. All right. Speaking of the games they could contribute in.
There you go. I like that.
DC United is back in the 2025 USM Cup. They are not in the Leagues Cup. MLS announcing sort of how all that works. It's convoluted as anything. It's hilarious to me that they said, okay, that's like the top 9 who make the playoffs. And because Vancouver is in the Champions Cup and is in the Canadian Championship, which they have to participate in, they said, never mind, we're not going to do the Leagues Cup. And as such, they decided to give San Diego the Leagues Cup, not at all having to do with their starting striker, being a Mexican
No.
national team, former Mexican national team player, probably
The
current.
integrity of this tournament is very important. To assume otherwise is just, horrible to do that. I actually like. I think having a 2-tiered. Granted, they had to like do some inside pool and they had an expansion team and all of the reasons they didn't make it straightforward. I think it would make sense going forward to have a 2-tier. If you're going to keep Leagues Cup, which maybe you're going to, having that 2-tiered system, have the Open Cup be for the also rans, basically the non-playoff teams. I think everybody should be in it, but if they're not going to do that, this is the one. This makes sense to me. This is and we get to play in the Open Cup, which we love. So it's a win-win for us anyway.
I think we'll see what they do next year. There's still a lot of rumblings about what the schedule is going to look like next year. Are they moving to a European calendar? I think that has started to pick up steam. There's a lot of movement. I don't know if you saw one of the latest reports about college soccer teams potentially joining the pro ranks and USL League One. That's something that's been discussed, and they will play
wild.
Yeah, it's happening. And I think what's been interesting in college soccer is that it's almost become, it's trending towards that way because yes, there's still kids out of high school, but then there are your kids that the kids in Europe or other countries that maybe just couldn't quite make it on that level, come to the US, they get recruited to come play here, they get to go to a US school, get a scholarship, get all that stuff, and then they also get to then play soccer. So like college soccer is becoming a much, much different game than it was. It's not just kids 19, 22 years old anymore. It's a lot of older players that are coming. So that's going to be interesting to watch if like these big clubs are like, we need to do this. And it'll be wild to see the Richmond Kickers play UVA men's soccer in like a game that
you'd love
that actually matters. That'd be kind of fun.
I'm wondering when college soccer is going to have the 32-year-old punter that keeps transferring to get eligibility, and when they're going to have that guy in their ranks. Probably soon enough.
Yeah, and that's might be the interesting part because I think the kids are signing contracts. Anyway, back to the story. DC United obviously back in the Open Cup. They are participating in that fully, not Leagues Cup. So I think makes me vastly more interested in the tournament. I really actually I watched like the Kickers, and then the Kickers got lost, and then I really didn't watch much of the Open Cup. I was angry
YouTube?
about it.
Is it on YouTube?
I think it is. It's partly on YouTube.
That sucks.
And I think CBS is getting some things. Obviously, there's no Messi, I think, for the Open Cup, which I think we might get robbed. I don't think we'll ever see that in that kind of. Nope. That's kind of sad. You have to think. I do wonder. Like I had some concerns about where Inter Miami are going to be this year. They seem like a team. If Messi comes back next year, and they don't make the playoffs, let's say, or they don't make they have the option to play in the Open Cup, there's no way that they will be in the Leagues Cup. They will figure out some way to get them in Leagues Cup.
Yep.
So
we'll see. Don't mind me. I'm just quickly looking to see if Wayne Rooney ever played in the Open Cup.
He did.
Did he?
I think he might. He had to have.
And not according to his FBref page.
Okay, maybe not.
He skipped that. He was not. He pulled the Steve Birnbaum.
We never really made it that far. I think the 2 years he was here to really be a part of it. Not really surprising. He didn't even show up as a coach for the Kickers.
Nope. No respect for the Open Cup. None.
DC's in the Open Cup. I do want to say, I think if I am Troy Lesane, this is something I am targeting for this year. Predictions for the year for DC are not looking great. Again, predicting anything in MLS is a absolute wild thing. I'm not surprised DC is that low. A lot of other teams are making, big moves, big signings. Those signings can also fail, and they can find themselves, outside looking in. MLS is nothing but a wild league every single year. It is, Charlie Boehm talks about it every year, how wild it is to try to predict what's going to happen in this league. I still think this team has a potential, if things go well, to target 7th, but they could very well finish 14th or even 15th if things don't go well. It's certainly a possibility. I think this team is very much wide open. They would definitely not be upper echelon in the league. I think it's just a matter of what happens, and we'll talk about some of the players' potential starting lineup coming up. But any thoughts from you on the Open Cup? You happy about it? Any?
I'm very excited about it. I wish that it were on Apple TV so that I could have all of my things in one spot. But we'll make do. We've watched games in weirder places than YouTube, so we'll see. I'm excited that they're in something that they have a chance to win, or at least have a chance to make a run in.
Now that you say that, I think there were some. It was like a weird broadcast schedule where it was like some games were on Apple TV.
Clearly, ours will be. I mean, if they're going to put any on there, they're going to flex to make sure DC United's on there.
We make it to the final, maybe we'll have it there. But I think it was like, it was a weird. There was like a lot of weird scheduling. I think it's good there'll be more teams, 16 teams in the league. When it was like just 8 teams, like it just felt very cheap and bad. Obviously, there will be some MLS Next Pro teams kind of mixed in there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Somebody in the chat, Ryan from YouTube says, I thought Wayne Rooney played in 2019. He did. That is true. And he actually scored a goal too. So in the round of 16. So against me against New York City FC.
Did we win that game or did
we? No, we lost.
Oh, okay. That's why. Yeah.
But there you go.
Wild.
It happened.
Wild. Okay. But yeah, I'm excited for the Open Cup. Excited to see the team play. Maybe they'll play in Richmond. That would be fun. That would be fun for me. So I'm ready to be re-engaged in that tournament. So I think it's going to be like amateur teams versus professional teams. Like it's going to be like a round of 32. I don't think there's going to be like any sort of like segmented. I think once like all the pro teams enter, it's going to be against like amateur teams. So should be a fun tournament. All right. DC did play a preseason game. We obviously have no video. I think the only video we've gotten is actually from the Charleston Battery.
I think you called that.
Yeah, like DC United 2-1 victors over the Charleston Battery. First half lineup I thought was notable. Kim Jong-hong in goal, Derek Dotson, Lucas Bartlett, Kyle Rawls, David Schnegg, so 4-man backline. Boris Hinau, Matty Petola, so sort of 2 defensive style midfields. Then Jared Stroud, Gabriel Pirani, Joao Peglo, and then Christian Benteke. Goals from Peglo and Pirani. I think this is pretty much like if you rolled this out as a starting lineup, I would probably believe you there. A 4-2-3-1. Obviously, swap out Dotson with Herrera. We found out Herrera is back and in training. Kyrell's obviously got his visa situation figured out. But I think that's a good preview of potentially of what a starting lineup could look like for this team. Again, we have no analysis. We did not watch them play. We don't know who looked good, how good the goals were. And it's also against, all due respect to the USL Championship, it is a USL Championship side. So DC should win that game.
This lineup tells me that Pirani really does have to step up in his chance creation this year.
Yeah, he does.
If you're looking at the players that are out there, it really is going to need to be able, he continues to probably not be a 10, not be a pure chance creator. But if you look at the rest of what's going on there, he needs to be doing more than he did in the past. Basically, everyone talks about his end of season, sort of his run where he scored a couple goals. He's got to make a big jump this year into a 90-minute player, into a starter that's contributing week in, week out. That's where he's at, particularly with some of the early injuries that are in place. He's going to have to step up early. So hopefully he can. I think he scored a goal. He's got minutes under his belt last year. I saw him work out a lot on Instagram. So he did the classical soccer winner player situation where he's like running in pools and with stretchy bands. So I hope that he turns it around and sort of shuts me up.
And he just got married. He should be in the honeymoon phase of his personal life.
So he's gonna gain weight, is what you're saying. He's gonna just hang out and eat cookies.
I'm saying he's going to be mentally happy.
Sure. I'm saying if he's anything like other people, he's going to be relaxing a lot more.
Yeah, but the only highlight we really have, I guess, on the goal looks like a Tubbs kind of OG. Farr doesn't really cover himself in glory. It's sort of I think it's actually from a corner kick or from a cross, and Farr kind of swats at it, misses it. Tubbs tries to make his best to clear it and just sort of heads it into the net. So Not a great goal to look at or to give up. But other than that, we really don't have anything else.
Nope. There's not much else. There's not much else to talk about. And it's fine. Early or off season, these preseason games are not really indicative of anything. Seasons where we've had, I there's not a correlation no matter what happens. We want no injuries. I want Aaron Herrera to start playing. That's my biggest concern. I want him to be healthy and start every match. That's what I want. That's my big concern for this team. No offense to Derek Dotson.
There's a comments like DC season is going to rely on a lot of ifs, and I will say that's like maybe a majority of the teams.
That's most season. That's most teams.
Most teams, it's a lot of ifs. It's a lot of ifs. If this player works out, this player works out. I would say we're not really that much different. I think only your elite level teams that have players, if they've been able to hold their roster together. And this is again MLS. There's like a season of change,
and even those Inter Miami saying if Messi can play more games than he did last season, and if Suarez doesn't have a big dip over time, that's how it goes.
Yeah, and if honestly, like they're a team that I think could be in some trouble just based on like a lot of the noise that's been happening off the season. Like there is like a player personnel or a person in the front office, I think they let go. So
after a fight on a bus,
yeah. So, and it seems like very much like a messy type of takeover of like decisions, and that for people who don't understand the league and like the nuances of the league, that always seems to go really well. So.
It really does, and also too, I think for Messi and Inter Miami haters, of which there are many, I think that when the wheels fall off this bus, they're going to fall off really, really, really loudly, and the bus is going to explode. So there's that. They may do it again this year. They have great players, but I think to your point, once that stuff starts happening, it's usually near the end of the story. It's usually there's usually not a lot of tread on the tires once that starts happening.
Yeah. Also worth mentioning, you look at Columbus, they just Cucho is now basically no more. Something that came together. Something that came together pretty much at the last minute. So definitely things can change very quickly in this league. I think there's a lot of ifs for several teams out there. So
do you think Columbus has a plan B ready lined up? I mean, they were talking about a new contract with him, but I'm sure they were also prepared for the idea of losing him as well.
Yeah, I think they were, and I think they'll go out. I think they'll be fine. They've got a really strong structure. I think they were without Cucho for a little bit, even in like a Champions League game against Mexico, against Monterrey, and they still looked really good. Like, so they are a team that can definitely the coaching situation. If they ever lose Wilfred Nancy, then we'll have another discussion. That's different. So, yeah. All right, we're gonna sub it up. We've got what? How many more Mondays? We got 3 more Mondays after this till the season. So we're gonna do sort of positional previews. We also got the Spirit. So this is starting with DC United. We've got the goalkeepers and defenders. We're just going to go through players out, players in, and who's sort of left on the roster.
Where they went. What's that?
Yeah. Goalkeepers, it's pretty easy. Alex Bono, Nathan Croft. Goalkeepers out. Alex Bono, Nathan Crockford, Tyler Miller, Luis Zamudio. Zamudio obviously went to Charleston. Tyler Miller, I think, is a trialist, and Bono went to New England.
Correct.
Crockford, I have not heard anything about Crockford.
Crockford went to FC Cincinnati.
Oh, okay. So
I'm trying to. Where did Tyler Miller go? He's on trial with somebody, and I don't remember who it is. Somebody in the chat help us out here.
Yeah, I think he's on. I think it was at San Diego. I want to say
that sounds right. Well, that was always
or was it Miami? I think it was Miami. I remember very clearly. It was a Miami reporter who reported that one of the trialists was Tyler Miller.
Good for him. Good. That's. I
don't think he got a contract. I think I think he showed up on trial, and I do not think he got a contract. Anyway, let's talk about that. Goalkeepers in Kim Jong-hoon, Luis Barazia, and Jordan Farr. Improvement over last season.
I don't know. Maybe. It's not like for sure. I don't think anybody who's like, absolutely, we're going to give up less goals than we did last year. That's reading the tea leaves a little bit too much. Jordan Farr, a good player at the USL Championship level. Luis Barraza had an opportunity in New York City 2 seasons ago and started quite a few games, and then last season lost his job. And Kim Jong-un or Kim Hong-jun, depending on how you want to do it from a Korean perspective, is a young player, and he's a young goalkeeper in a new league, learning a new language with a new defense. We'll see. He has the raw talent, certainly, based on everything we read about. We haven't seen anything, obviously, and no one here is watching K-League. But I think that they're very, very high on him, and he's looks the part. He definitely looks the part. So, well, jury's out. The jury is the most out on this, I think.
I think potentially, just with Kim's signing, potentially better. I think it's extremely positive that we're seeing him get minutes out there with the first team. If you thought this guy was a project, or you thought this guy wasn't ready, you would see far out there starting with the starters, heading into this season. I mean, things can change, but it's also worth noting that Troy Lesane's been incredibly positive about sort of his arrival. So I am saying I think he will be day one starter for this team. I think that's an incredibly positive sign that they are like, we like this guy. We think he could be good. We think he's ready right now. Like, we don't think he needs to sit behind anybody or wait or whatever. He's ready to go. I think that's an extremely positive sign if you're looking for good signs. And I think if he shows up and plays well, that's the start of a team. Once you find a good goalkeeper in this league, that's usually what people talk about as like, that's job number one. Find a goalkeeper that can elevate your team and keep you in games. And that's job number one of a team that's been struggling, that's looking to make the playoffs.
We're moving out of line of the questions, but Boda Bud asked us on YouTube, said, who will be the player we most regret not resigning? And the answer is none of them. I don't think there's any player we're gonna look back and miss.
Yeah, it's Todd Dodge also asked the same question, so I wonder if this is Todd from Facebook. Says, what player will we get now responding? I will answer. I mean, I guess we traded him, but maybe Matthias Click is probably the name. That's the name
of the players that are not here anymore. That would be the one.
Yeah, of the defenders and goalkeepers right now, I don't think there's really anybody. But we traded him. We didn't talk about players that left. There isn't anybody. I think that was kind of the point of this year.
We're gonna miss left back Christian Dahome. I think that's the thing we're gonna miss, but not as much as right back Christian Dahome. We'll miss him even more.
Exactly. I think this is, again, an interesting goalkeeping core. I think if Kim is the starter, if Kim locks down that job, I think that bodes very, very well for the rest of the year. And I think would be a major. But if you want to talk about this team, has to give up fewer goals. Like, that's the name of the game this year. I think they've approached this winter like, we have to. And also, you look at who they signed sort of the tail end of last year, who they tried to fit in their roster. Very defense-minded signings. They definitely have sort of said, we're going to solidify the defense. We've got the offense is maybe still a work in progress. You got Benteke, but like, how all that's going to fit together, I think is a little questionable. But at the very least, we need to give up fewer goals. We need to give up fewer goals. I was going to see how many goals they gave up last season, but that's why they didn't make the playoffs, was they literally gave up way too many goals. It was, let's see, I'm trying to remember the number, 70 goals. 70 goals.
Definitely a negative goal differential, right? No,
negative 18. Yeah, definitely. They gave up the second most goals only to New England, I believe, if I'm reading this roster correctly. So, got to give up fewer goals. Let's go. Sorry. Yep.
Nope. Just defenders.
Yep. Defenders. Players out: Pedro Santos, Hayden Sargis, Christopher McVeigh, Mattia Cambone off to Bournemouth, Steve Birnbaum to retirement.
Well, and a DC Power general manager where all the players are leaving, and hopefully he still has players to attend to.
Yeah, that's things not going well though. Defenders in: Lucas McNaughton, Derek Dotson, Kai Rawls. Obviously, Kai Rawls being the higher end of that. Defenders on the roster from 2024: David Schnegg, Connor Antley, Lucas Bartlett, and Garrison Tubbs, and of course Aaron Herrera. So looking at that defensive core, obviously a lot of dead weight sort of off the roster, Mattia Cambone notwithstanding. But you get an offer for him. I think you kind of have to take it. Hayden Sargis, a player who literally just hung around I didn't really play very much. I'm curious where he's off to.
He's nowhere.
He's
at home. He's at home making YouTube videos still. So I think he may be on trial somewhere now. There was an interesting note about Matai, and I can't think of where I saw it, but it was talking about at fault goals per player. Sort of like it's a measurement of whose fault it was, and from a proportion perspective, he had the most out of any DC United at any DC United defender, which is not an eyeball thing, but it was borne out there. He had the highest ceiling of the players that got released, quite obviously, but I don't think that the team is worse off having him gone. To your point, dead weight gone there. Chris McVeigh, a guy who played a lot more probably than was intended to play, and now he's going to do that in San Diego probably.
Yeah. I mean, again, Pedro Santos, I think as a player, I think he will be a player. I think we will look on potentially fondly, and that I think he really showed up every day. Another player I don't think they were anticipating playing all that much, but he did. And he definitely showed his age as the year went on. Players, and obviously Kai Rolls is the big name coming over from the Scottish Premiership. Maybe not. I think when we all thought about like a center defender, I don't think we were thinking like an Australian center defender from the Scottish Premier League. I think this is one of those cases where you kind of have to say, okay, this is maybe a big step. Now, he is playing for the Australian national team, so he's certainly an international.
That's going to be a killer flight.
Yeah,
just a killer. He might want to maybe take a year off from home national team games. Oof.
Kind of a mixed bag amongst fans. Some people thought he was pretty good. Some people were like, I think there was some concern, I guess, about his ability to be physical, and I think some people speculate he could do well in this league. I will say, if he can manage speed in this league, that is a mark of a good player, because in MLS, it's a lot about speed and trying to manage that. Remains, I think this is one of those signings. I think that if it hits again, another one of those ifs. If this one hits and this one's good, then bodes really well from the season. If you can nail, I think, Kim and Kai Rawls, then I think you're on your way as far as being a solid team in this league.
And then also from players that turned over who did not leave, David Schnegg, Connor Antley coming back from ACL, still working his way back. Mm-hmm. Lucas Bartlett on the back of his first somewhat exceptional season, being basically given the keys at the other starting center back position, which I think is a gamble, maybe not a high risk gamble, but certainly one where a player doesn't have a long pedigree of being the guy. He's now the guy. Garrison Tubbs and Aaron Herrera. Aaron Herrera and David Schnegg are, without a doubt, must play, must be healthy, must contribute players in this team. There was a question, I think, previously about did they put any depth at left back? Or are they going to go with a 3-back set and hope the winger can make up for that? The Connor Antley is intended to be cover on both sides. Derek Dotson's I think more comfortable at right back, but probably can play on either side. They're not going to have to put midfielders back there this season unless things go completely haywire, which has happened before. Not impossible, not completely out of the possibility. But if a team's doing well, David Schnegg is staying healthy. David Schnegg is playing every week, and the same story for Aaron Herrera. This team took a nosedive on their danger, on their ability to create goals when Aaron Herrera was not on the field. So cross your fingers.
If you talk about who the player of the highest pedigree, obviously Aaron Herrera, all-star. David Schnegg was brought in last year, and dude had an impressive pedigree. He played for a championship team in the Austrian Bundesliga. So he is a guy who, once he, I think, got settled in, started to show really well, and then he picked up an injury, and he was out for most of the year and didn't really return until I think the last few games. So
he was injured coming back. I think they rushed him back because they really, really needed him at the end of the season, and he looked like he was a guy who was not physically ready.
Yeah, and so hopefully this year, full preseason, he's back in. I think he's a player that I think might sort of fly under the radar of most MLS pundits. He was a player acquired last year, so obviously not going to get too much attention. But in actuality, he is sort of a new player for 2025 because we have not really seen too much of him. We got some good returns from him. I thought there were some great moves. He sort of showed he could play kind of that, end line to end line on the left side. I think having some more balance on the roster might help him as well. Where he doesn't feel like he has to cover so much. He can have players sort of check back and cover a little bit. So, I think we're going to see a 4-man back line. I think the fact that he went 4-2-3-1 to start that game with everybody healthy, I think that's what we'll see. That's what we'll see.
Let's run these questions down. There's quite a few. Thanks again for sending your questions in all the ways you do.
Yes, as always. I see Doyle predicted us to finish second to last DC United. So I see Doyle just predicted a second to last finish for DC United in the Eastern Conference this year. Thoughts? What kind of season would get Troy fired?
That kind.
You think so?
Second to last finish. Second year of his 3-year contract after he's built a team in the way that he wants to. Yeah, I think so. Second to last place, wooden spoon contention, because I think Mackay is the buck stops really with him overall. He picked the coach. I think if he's got a 3-year contract, he might change course if they don't improve at all, and in fact they get worse. I think it's very possible. By the way, Fair. Doyle just trying to sell some Substacks. I think going on here. He's trying to enrage DC United fans into rage paying him $5.
And again, I will say view top 3, 4, 5, like top 3 or 4 of each conference, pretty well set who that's going to be. Maybe there's some fluctuation if a team regresses a little bit. Everything beyond that, everybody's just guessing, and a lot of it's based on excitement. A lot of it's based on Chicago probably is high up on those rankings because of who's coaching them right now and what they've been able to sign. Same with New England. Signings can also miss. You can get a player who has all the right pedigree, who seems really good, and it can miss. And even Bourne signings that no one's really talking about can hit and be seen as like very solid contributions. So everybody's guessing when it comes to MLS,
unless you're Angus, and then you have convinced yourself to be extremely optimistic about this season. You might be the most optimistic guy in the fan base, but I think that's probably better than the opposite for sure. I think that there's some need to that to go around. But to your point, I don't think any of the players we've signed are making people think deeper into the playoffs. We're raising the floor, as we've said many times, and that is not a sexy thing whatsoever. Cap management is not sexy. It's smart, but not sexy.
Yeah, I will say, I think there is a scenario where things are maybe going wrong, and then they say, okay, the summer window, we got this player coming in, we're gonna bring in this DP, let's say, we're gonna shift up, we've got the roster space, now let's see how you do. And if things get better and they still maybe finish outside, there's a chance you might keep him around and say how you can do this. I think there's a lot of gamble too I will say too, though, I do think there's a lot of gamble with Troy last year took a team that made no sense and got them to buy in, got Benteke. There was questions about how much Benteke would care. I think we had it on the preview, like how much is he going to care? Last year of his contract, he might not be back. This is a team that's rebuilding. Why would he care? And he got, Benteke to buy in. He got a lot of players to buy in and managed to drag a team that had no business probably even being close to the playoff line to the playoffs. And I think that is Mackay's gamble, is that Troy can do what he did last year. He can get guys like Dahomey, like Martin Rodriguez, players like Benteke to sort of elevate their game and to play better than what they had shown previously. So,
yeah, Arcovada 244 had a similar question about Troy having pressure. I think also too, this is a hypothetical and it won't happen, but if Benteke has a rough start to the season, the team's losing, and he starts making sounds about this roster and coaching, who goes first? Granted, he's only through this season, but he's also the entire offense. If there starts to be like some friction between him and Troy, who gets the boot first in that scenario?
Probably Troy. If you're being,
that's also what I would think. It would have to be really, really bad, but if it's early enough in the season, it would be that. I don't think that's going to happen. They get along very well.
Yeah.
Brandon Zabron says, Do you actually think the team will pass it around more, or work their shots versus cross it to Benteke every attack? No, I think they're gonna give it to Benteke every attack. I still think that's the plan because it works.
I think that'll be the primary plan. I think there could be this team is much more balanced as far as how it's built. A lot of that cross to Benteke was because the team never really had an ability to be sort of a cohesive unit for very long because they were moving players around. They needed this player to cover here. They needed Dahome to slot back to left back because they had no left back cover. I think the system that they built was built around because of the limitations they had in the lineup. I think now you're going to have a much more balanced team that you can build a kind of more cohesive offense. You're going to have, a full off season. Basically, their attack, other than Randall Leal, their attack is basically, and Joao Peglo, I guess, is the other addition. But it's a much more cohesive and cohesive attack that I think they could be a little bit more varied in kind of how they build their team. But we'll see. I think that first game is going to be an interesting watch.
John Broussard asked a question that's similar. He says, I don't think Troy could play the way he wanted to last year because the players we had, do you think this defense can enable a style that he wants? Or are we still short on quality? I still think, as Timothy in the chat says, I still think we need a number 10. That is the Leal is the open question. Is what can he be? How healthy can he be? How much can he contribute? If he is able to step in, then I think we have plugged the hole in the boat for now. And I think we can. I think that's no longer a hyper concern. I don't think I guess it's a question of what is the aspiration when you say, are we short on quality? Troy can probably get what he wants out of this. This is not a team less talented than the Red Bulls team he had when he was managing them. I don't think. I think it's probably a similarly ceilinged club.
Yeah, it's all. I think I'll be on who the manager can get out of. I think we saw some characters in Troy that he can get buy-in. I think that's crucial when you have a team that you're getting a lot of new players. And also again, I will say, when you have a team that knows how they want to be and they can execute it, and that's what you saw from DC was that they were a team that came together and they knew how they wanted to play and they dominated the first few games of the season. They looked really good because they knew how they wanted to play. And that can be a powerful thing early in the season because a lot of the other teams are still trying to figure that out. And you can take advantage of a team that might be more talented than you, but they're still trying to work through a lot of sort of high profile talents. And when you have a team that, really you look at the roster, the starting lineup that they presented, you have a new, I want to see players that were not here on the roster last year. So 1, 2, 3.
Should be 3.
Yeah, 3. And one of those we know is going to be replaced by Aaron Herrera. So 2 players basically on that roster were
4, I guess, if Kim, Dotson, Kai, Peglo are all new. But to your point, Dotson will be Herrera, so that'll just be yeah.
So 3 new players basically in that starting roster. Everybody else was here last year. So that's certainly an ability to be more organized and to come out knowing how you want to play, take advantage of a team that might be more talented, but still doesn't know how you're going to play. And then Hoya's DCU says, last year the front office met with supporters before the season. Have you heard about any meetings in 2025? We have. There was a meeting between the supporters group. Again, it's so nice. There's not like any crisis that we have to cover. It was just a boring.
Can you hear me knocking on my wood table before you're saying that there's currently no problem?
Currently no problem. You're right. You're very much right.
But it is nice. It is not. There is neither a supporters being mad at other supporters, nor are there there are no planned protests. There are no planned boycotts. We're just going to go into this year and watch some soccer for now. But I got to say, once again, looking back, we're playing in Florida this year, and it's not for no reason. It's certainly not for no reason. It certainly worked. It certainly, I think, had an effect.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Defensive.
Go ahead. More? No,
I was starting to talk. I think that's all the questions we have. Again, thank you guys for contributing to them. Next week we'll talk about the midfielders for DC United, and we're going to start with the Washington Spirit, and we're going to talk goalkeepers and defenders for them.
Only you and I could go over an hour on February 3rd. Only and only preview half of the roster for each team. It's an impressive skill we have.
We had some other news. There's a lot of news that's coming out, so we have some other news to cover too. So, Washington Spirit goalkeepers out. I think this will be fewer outs than we had with TC United. Nicole Barnhart retired, now an assistant goalkeeper coach. Goalkeepers obviously on Aubrey Kingsbury, Kaylee Collins,
Sandy McIver, and Kyla and Liza Jesse, who formerly of Bosselman. So one new player there in the goalkeeper. And I think it's important to talk about the new player because we talked about it, I think, on last show. Scottish international, Man City player, only played 3 matches last year. Previously played 18 on loan at Everton, but she was brought over with a transfer fee. She takes an international spot. The thing that's notable here is what Gonzalez said. What Jonah said last week in the press conference about this player, and it was, I don't have the exact quote, but basically it was like, we think it's important to ask more out of our goalkeeper or out of this spot. We think we can get more quality out of this spot. And, in my mind, Aubrey Kingsbury is the top 3 goalkeeper in the league. Mm-hmm. She makes crazy saves. She's a leader but I looked at the advanced stats from last season's performance, and they're not her, but she was in the 70th percentile for most of her statistics, which is good, but not her best 11 seasons she's had previously. I think that the defense there was a problem at times. There were injuries. The center back's position still has not really been fully sorted out, other than Tara McKeown. So watch this space. Aubrey is still going to start almost every match. McIver is not in a position yet where she's looking to challenge for minutes. But I think between her and Liza, they have 2 goalkeepers that they're looking towards the future with. So something to pay attention to.
Yeah. And, I think that's maybe a smart thing to do. And I think this has been a team, they make moves, but they've earned some benefit of the doubt with some of the moves they made. We've questioned a lot of their moves over the past, and they've kind of most of them come good. Mm-hmm. So I think that's certainly something to watch. I mean, Aubrey Kingsbury is a starter.
Yes.
I think we'll see. It's interesting. They have 4 goalkeepers on the roster. Have to think that there is some thoughts about whether all 3 of those goalkeepers will stay.
Collins and Jesse will battle out the 3rd spot. I think once Liza comes back from injury, it'll be a question. Collins was a national team era and also injury replacement for last year, so I think it's just cover for now. One of those players will be set adrift. Probably Collins, possibly.
And then so I don't think really much else you can really say about the goalkeepers. I think Kingsbury's your starter. She's going to be out there. I think McIver, I think, is the interesting pick, and maybe we'll see some appearances out of her. And if she looks well, we know that there are opportunities, and there's still a salary cap in this league. So it might be a watch this space type of thing, mm-hmm. That type of move. Defenders out: Anik Patel, Jenna Butler, and Anna Halfordy. Anna Halfordy probably the most hurtful of the releases. I think she was a beloved figure amongst DC fans. Her interview after winning the 2021 championship was fantastic. She basically said, "We are the bleeping champions." That was one of my favorite moments probably of that team winning. So, and I think she's, it's that one stinks, I think, for a lot. I think she's a player who played really well. Second ACL injury. I think she's released. I hope she ends up somewhere. I hope there is some avenue for her to remain sort of either as a player in the game or somewhere on the field. So
a surprising roster crunch for the Spirit after the players they picked up through the draft in the offseason, and they're still looking to improve in some other spots. I just think they ran out of spots for her, unfortunately. Yeah. Butel played more matches than anyone would have expected last year. She's played in 24 matches, started 21 times. I think that they're looking for a center back. That's still going on. Mm-hmm. Jonah said that last week. So,
yeah, Casey Kruger, obviously defenders remaining. What more said about her? She was fantastic last year, just absolutely solid at that wing back position. Kate Wiesner, Tara McKeown. We've talked about her. I am looking out for her potentially making a national team debut if she keeps up the way she did last year. Just an unbelievable move from like a forward to a defender, and just like fits right into that position. I think the battle out for one of the wingback position. Obviously, like, you know, Casey Kruger is going to be your starter.
Yep.
The real question is going to be Gabrielle Carl versus Paige Mateer in that sort of right back spot. We saw Paige Mateer, I think, be a more of a, like, she's going to progress the ball through her dribbling. I think that's where we saw her really excel. Like, she would run downhill at players and kind of throw things off. You know, it's an interesting style. She's been sort of a Swiss Army knife of a player. She played at the center midfield. I think in a previous system she worked great. In Jonah's system, I don't think it works so well. So then they slot her over to right back, and then she starts excelling again. So that's going to be, I think, the story to watch. Is it going to be Carl, or is it going to be Mateer, kind of in that spot?
Mateer is to Herald as Tara McKeown was to Mark Parsons. So they both made a better player by moving them. Just to touch on some things about each of his players, I think I was looking back. Kruger's stats. That's another, like, where the eyes don't really match. She was. I thought she was better going forward than she was, but it turns out, like, defensively, she was a much. Her stats were much better. But you know, she still did the job. But Paige Mateer is a player who was elite in the league for all of her defensive skills, rather than her going forward, which is kind of interesting. Considered not great range of passing, but really getting top tier in blocks, aerials, tackles. She is as good in the air as Esme Morgan is bad in the air. She was at 0.01% in the league at winning headers. I think Morgan struggled. She was another player that brought in from Man City, that the thought was she's going to come in, she's going to start. I interviewed her. She was talking about being one of the best center backs in the world. I think she's going to get there. She could certainly get there. I think she struggled with the physicality. She did not struggle with the passing or tackling or progressive carry. She did all those things at an elite level in WSL. But I think similar to we talked about some players. We talked about Kai on the DC United side. Being adept to the physicality is going to be very important for center backs in either league. And the last year she was not ready. Hopefully, this offseason was all about strength.
Yeah. I was curious. I'm trying to open FBref. FBref is having issues right now. I want to see, like, Paige Mateer's, like, progressive carries stat and see, like, where
she was in the 90th percentile.
Yeah, that's what I would thought.
Yeah, she had a really good season, other than her passing range, but with the ball and defensively, she was shut down. Gabby Carl, another player that I think was quietly very effective. 26 matches, over 2,000 minutes, top 8% in the league in tackles, top defender in progressive carries and passes and shot creating actions. Just kind of really, so they have from we talked about it. You talked about it. Casey Kruger, Paige Mateer, Kate Wiesner, and Gabby Carl. You have 4 fullbacks that can all play on either side of the ball. Kruger probably not a left back, but all the rest of those players have played both sides of the ball. I think that's certainly not an area they're really concerned about for 2025. Tamara Bolt, a new player was a forward at Internacional in Brazil, but has been listed as a defender. I don't know where. I don't know if she's listed as a center back. They need help at the center back.
Yeah.
They have Esme Morgan.
Esme Morgan.
And Tara McKeown. Tara McKeown's going to play every match, but you need some depth there. So I assume Bolt they're looking at her as a center back, but we need more. Certainly, I don't think that's going to cut it for a team with the aspirations they have. They probably need another one.
Yeah, that's it. Tamara Bolt. So she's listed as forward, but that's interesting. Now you got me curious to wanting to look that up.
She's tall, so maybe center back. I don't know. They don't need any more fullback depth, so that would make sense that they were looking at her for center back. Kruger can also play at center back in a pinch, or not even really in a pinch. Just can play there, but I think that they want to have her at outside back as much as possible.
So according to this, she has featured as a right back. So maybe more of a wing back type of role for her.
So then 2 center backs, please.
Yeah. So they need some center backs, and I think they've got. Hopefully, they've got some idea of how they want to do that. I trust I trust Krikorian. I trust them to go out
Ashley
and find
Hatch,
a
new
plus.
center back. They're just going to start converting all of their forwards to center backs.
I
Worked
think they're going to
once.
send players. It's a question too. Also, that I think they're still, again, there's no draft, so you've got to, go out and sign players. So if I'm a player out of college who's a top level center back or a top level player, I'm maybe looking at that. Also, there's a lot of transition going on right now in a lot of places around the league. Maybe there's a open chance to get a signing, to get a player in. Washington has to be an attractive place based on everything we've seen so far, based on the atmosphere, the culture, who you're playing for. So they will definitely be in those conversations. I would expect them to be able to go out and to make a signing or to bring somebody in. So yeah, I don't.
If everyone doesn't jump for the European leagues in the meantime.
Yeah, we are aligned this. We're doing our DC Night preview, so we're also doing a Spirit preview. We are exceedingly early for that Spirit preview. I don't think they start till like much later. I don't have the schedule.
So the roster will not. This will not be the full roster at the end of the. So they have enough players to fill out the roster, but I think there's a lot of season-ending injury players that are not making up the numbers here.
Yeah, March 7th, obviously with the 2025 Challenge Cup, where they'll play at the Orlando Pride again, so revenge game chance. And then obviously their first match will be March 14th at the Houston Dash. So they have like a good 3 to 4 weeks more to like build out a roster and to get players and to bring players in. So I think we're a little early with the preview, but hey, I think we're gonna fold it in anyway, and we'll have much more news to come as they sort of make signings and make players. And I wouldn't put it past them to do something big, especially at that defensive center back.
Sign Robin to an extension, please.
Yeah, please sign Robin. Please announce like a 3-year, 4-year extension for Trinity Rodman. I really hope there is like a Amazon, like, look, just whatever you got to pay, just pay it. We don't care, just go pay it. So, all right, folks, I think that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. You guys are awesome. We're going to be back next week. We've got the midfielders to talk about and possibly some more news. Maybe we'll get some actual highlights and maybe we'll get a stream of a preseason game. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows, folks? All right. Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you guys next week. Hopefully I won't sound sick. Vamos.
Vamos. Nice.